So now we explore a solution to the problem of the non-optimality of a competitive outcome by looking at enforceable property right. And you'll note that this does not directly involve the government intervention, unlike the quota or Pigouvian tax or the subsidy solutions. So imagine here that the property rights are such that the producer of the externality does not directly have the right to produce it. Consumer 2 has a right to an externality-free environment, but consumer 2 could demand a payment to allow the externality to be produced, a compensation, if you like. Now, the producer will only agree to make a payment of T here if the utility of producing the externality less the payment is at least as good as the situation that the producer would be in if he or she was producing nothing. Now, what is consumer 2's problem here? It is to maximize the utility given that H is being produced, plus, of course, T. And since we're in a quasi-linear economy, of course, we can simply add T directly and not the utility of T, because T will simply be added as numeraire. So consumer is looking what level of externality will maximize this, subject to the condition, of course, that the producer accepts this. So the utility to the producer is at least as good as producing nothing. Now we can simply plug this condition here into the objective function, so we're looking to maximize we can replace T by this. Okay. And now we're looking at a first order condition, which is as follows. Okay, which then becomes the following. And this first order condition here, this result should be very familiar to you, because this is also the first order condition for the Pareto optimal allocation. So the level here, the externality level which will be produced, happens to be H0, right? The Pareto optimal level. So what have we established here? We've established that if we define property rights and allow a compensation to be made for the right to produce the externality, we find that the externality level that the parties will settle on or agree to will actually be the Pareto optimal level. So the parties will find a way to trade here for the right to produce the externality, such that both parties will be will have maximized their utility. And I should add that the original allocation of rights is actually irrelevant. So you can equally show that if instead you give the producer the right to produce the externality, and if now it's consumer 2 must actually pay the producer to reduce the production level of the externality, you will also find a similar result. You will find that the parties will be able to agree to produce the Pareto optimal level. So let me make this a bit more explicit. Why is the allocation of property rights irrelevant? Well, let's consider a situation where consumer 2 now is paying the producer to reduce the externality level to a level H, so consumer 2 is trying to maximize his or her utility associated with H, less the payment being made, such that the producer is getting a utility level associated with H plus the lump sum payment being made, which is at least as good as the utility level reached if the producer was producing H star, which is the competitive level that the producer would normally choose to produce if the payment weren't being made. So if we plug the constraint into the function, we have to maximize this expression here. The first order condition becomes as follows. Assuming an interior solution, this is equal to 0. This term here drops off. And so this becomes, again, the same first order condition that we've seen for the Pareto optimal solution. So again, you recognize the same first order condition. So we'll find again that the parties will reach an agreement to produce the Pareto optimal level H optimal. So this is actually a result which is known as Coe's theorem, which is that the efficient outcome is reached no matter how property rights are initially allocated.